Dear students and respected viewers, Assalamu alaikum. As you know, we are reading the history and the chapter is the Great Mughals, in which we talked about the different Mughal kings, and at the last but not least was Aurangzeb, about whom we talked in our previous lecture, in which we also little bit discussed about the Mughal administration. And now today our whole topic is the administration of Mughals, that is their different departments, revenue, army, as well as the decentralization of powers between the central government as well as state governments, and how they were running the different subas, which we will call in the modern language as states. We have to discuss, we have to talk about their administration today. As you remember and you know it very well, in our previous lecture we talked about the Mughal administration, in which we talked that Mughal administration have both the features of Central Asian as well as Indian traditional administration. But now we are going, as you know, we talked about their central administration. In central administration, the king was at the top, and he had also a vizier, prime minister. The different departments have different heads. The head of revenue department was called a diwan, as well as the chief justice in modern language, he was called as Qazi. Because this was a Muslim emperor and Muslim rulers were there, and their language was Urdu, and they were calling it as Qazi. So that means, as we know in Urdu, the justice is called as Qazi. Now we have to talk about the provincial administration. Provincial administration is very easy to understand. For example, I will give a simple example to understand for your better understanding. We have central government, then we have state government. In states we have different districts. In districts we have towns. In towns we have villages, right? Then villages, right? Same was the case with these people. First of all, the empire was divided into provinces, and each province was called Suba. The head of Suba was called Subadar. Very easy to understand. And Subadar was responsible to the emperor. That means he was responsible, he was giving his every answer to emperor. In other words, he was accountable to the emperor. Suba was further divided into sarkars, and each sarkar had many parganas. A pargana consists of many villages. As I told you, state, then district, then town, then villages. Alright? And villages into mahalas or wards. And now, when we talked about the Soba, it have a Sobedar, then Soba into district, right? Then at the lowest level, bottom level was town. Town was itself administered by the Kotwal. And Kotwal was responsible to the higher authority, and his office was called as Kotwali. The backbone of every nation state or every country is its revenue. That means the money on which the government runs. It is the king or the emperor or the prime minister are running its country, its state. Now, when we are talking about the revenue, it is not basically the money of any king or of any president or prime minister, but this is the money which is taken from our pockets. But we are giving it indirectly. That is the known as taxes. This is also in the modern times, as well as it happened in the previous times in history. As you know, GST in modern India, but when we are talking about the medieval India, revenue itself was generated through taxes. But on what? The source of income at that time was land and trade. That means tax was collected from land and trade. Land was measured, right? It was measured, as you know, in our Kashmir we have land in canals, in Malras. That means it was measured at that time how much land a person have, that much he used to pay the tax. Land was measured and revenue was fixed. How much land I have to pay that much tax. First of all, how land was measured. It is also a point to understand. First, it was measured with rope, but that was not a transparent system, or we will call it as was not an honest way of measuring the land, and it has various problems which are also discussed on our book. As when it was wet, it used to expand. When it was wet, it used to shrink, and when it was dry, it used to expand. Through this, you can understand sometimes it may show large land when it may be small, or it may show small when it was large. But with the passage of time and during the rule of Akbar, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, his revenue head Raja Todar Mal, he introduced a new system or a new way of measuring the land through a bamboo reeds joined together by iron rings. That means he introduced, instead of rope, a bamboo stick, which was very much transparent. Now, how much land I have is one thing, but how much land it is useful, how much land is for the purpose of cultivation, and even though if it is cultivated, but how much it is fertilized, how much fertility it have. Are you getting my point? It is very easy to understand, and for this purpose land was divided itself into three categories: good, average, and bad. When we are talking about the good, that land which have the good or great level of fertility; average, which is neither too good nor too bad. But when we are talking about the bad, that means it don't have fertility, right? And revenue was fixed on this criteria. Now, whether it is fertile land, average land, or bad land, but how much I have to pay the tax, as you know also, that in the Aurangzeb's rule, we see there have been revolts. Why? Because he changed the tax system from 1/3 to 1/2. And here, when we are reading generally in Mughal Empire, 1/3 of the produce was fixed as the tax. Later, the system of Dahsala was introduced. What was Dahsala? Dahsala, in this system, the average produce was calculated on the basis of previous 10 years. That means it was not based for a 1 year, 2 year, 1 year, but it was based on the 10 years. It is average. For example, I will give a simple example to understand. We have here paddy, rice, or maize
For example, maize cultivation. On an average, on an 2 canals of land, I am getting 1 year 1 quintal maize. But in the next year, I am not getting the same. I am getting only 1 quintal. It is calculated for 10 years, and it is average. For example, in 1 year I got 2 quintal, second year I got 1 quintal, another year I got 1.5, third, fourth year I got also 2. For example, in 10 years these are 20 quintals. And on these basis, tax was fixed in the Sala system. Now when we are talking about the trade was another source of revenue. Trade was another source of revenue, and India exported textiles, species, indigo, etc. and other things. Akbar encouraged internal trade through the building of roads and removal of unnecessary taxes. That means Akbar, Jalaluddin Akbar, was not only in the favor of external trade, he was also the great supporter of internal trade. That means trade within the country. To defend our country, to defend our land, to defend our territory, we need army. As it is very easy, simply, and Kashmiris are fully aware about it. We look around us that we have police, we have RR, BSF, CRPF. This is as army. These people are here to defend our land. But here in Kashmir, something happens against it, which is unnatural. But when we are talking about the Mughal Empire, this was the first kingdom who introduced the ranks. This system was called as Mansabdari. Mansabdar was supposed to maintain both the horses and the soldiers. First of all, the Mansab was the rank. Mansab was the rank, and Mansabdar who held a particular rank. And rank was itself divided into two, that is Zat and Sawar. Zat Mansab means number of horses under it. That means when you are talking about the Zat Mansab, then how many horses you have under. Presently, we don't have horses in the army, we have vehicles, right? In those days, there have been horses, elephants, camels. But in India, there have been horses as a means of transportation. Even horses were maintained, on which they use it to fight. And second was the Sawar. Sawar means a rank or position with number of soldiers under it. That means how many soldiers there are under you, right? The rank ranged from 10 to 10,000, and 5,000 were given only to princes. Now, how these people, Mansabdars, were maintaining their horses, their soldiers, their own selves, where from they were getting the money. For this very purposes, they were granted jagirs, that means land, to collect the tax, to collect revenue, and which was supposed to be his salary and that of his troops, as well as to maintain all the people under him. That means both the soldiers as well as horses, those which were under him, and he was supposed to maintain them through this revenue which he was collecting from the people, from the land which was under him, that is Jagir. But now, when we are talking about the Mughal Empire, this Mansabdari was not hereditary. As we talked in the Tughlaq dynasty, Feroz Shah Tughlaq made it hereditary, that if the father was Mansabdar, simply his son, then his son, right? But in Mughal Empire, it used to transfer, it used to change because of the abilities, because of the qualities of a person. It was all about the Mughal administration, the great Mughals, and also about their administration, about the central administration, provincial administration, army administration, revenue administration, on which we talked in our lectures. Thank you for today.